Hey everyone, I'm Rick Beato. The last time I was in LA, I had a chance to sit down with Counting Crows' Adam Duritz. Adam's ability to blend raw emotion with poetic storytelling has established him as one of the most influential singers and songwriters of his generation. Before we move on, I want to remind you to hit the subscribe button. Here's my interview.
Adam, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Such an honor to meet you. I'm such a huge fan of you. You're an incredibly great singer, lyricist, everything.
Thank you.
I always wondered how you think about music, the melodies you write, the lyrics you write, but I want to kind of go back. I usually like to do a little bit of the history part of it and talk about growing up and your first introduction into music and how you got into singing and writing songs.
Well, I love music. I always did. It was my refuge, I think. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. I didn't always know very many people, but I had, first my parents' records, and then, later my own that I bought. I just listened all the time. I was obsessed with music. And then when I was old enough, started going to see concerts, and it was just a huge part of my life. I loved listening to music. I loved reading about music. I just devoured everything I could find about music. But I didn't really think of it as something I would be a part of, just something I really enjoyed. I mean, I liked singing and I had an okay voice, but until you write a song, I didn't see it as something I would do. Unless you're gonna go be in high school musicals or something, and that didn't seem like the future for me. It wasn't until I was a freshman in college, my fall term, my freshman year, I was in like a music theory class or a chemistry class, something like that, and
Very similar.
Well, whatever it was, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay.
My sister was back in Berkeley, and she was 16, which is a tough time to be a girl. My mother was away in medical school, and I was gone. So my sister was home with my dad, who's great. But, 16-year-old girl, it's just a tough time to be a human. And she was struggling, and I was just thinking about it in class, and I started kind of writing this song in my head. And when I got out of class, I started wondering, if I could figure out how it goes, if I could figure out how to play it on the piano, because I kind of knew how to play piano. Not really. I knew how to make a major chord and a minor chord.
Okay.
And so I went back to my dorm, and across the hall from my room in my dorm freshman year was a lounge with a piano in it. And I kind of went in there and locked the door and started ding, 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 and trying to figure out how to I could hear the song in my head, so what chord goes with that melody, and figured it out. And it's pretty simple. I think it would take me about 10 minutes to write the song now, but it took me the rest of the day. I skipped the rest of my classes. And sometime later that afternoon, I had finished a song, and I was a songwriter from that moment on. It was a real light bulb moment for me. I think that's the biggest challenge when you're a kid is how do you make that transition from being a child to an adult? And when you get to college, it's sort of just like high school in a lot of ways, except that you're on your own, you can do whatever you want, but you're still going to a schedule, and at some point you're gonna have to learn enough that you transition to this nebulous future thing where you take care of yourself and you earn money, and I didn't know how that was gonna work. There was something wrong with me, and I knew that. I didn't know the nature of the mental illness then, but I knew there was something wrong, and it was rather severe, and I just couldn't figure out how to make it work. So I had real worries about what was gonna happen to me as an adult. How I was gonna take care of myself, just feed myself, or, I really didn't fit in places. And then I wrote this song, and it was over. I was a songwriter. Before any of the rest of my friends had any idea what they were doing with their life, I knew what I was doing with mine. It was because that's the thing, you're undefined as a child. And the big thing about the transition to adulthood is that self-definition where you go, okay, I am this,
Mm-hmm.
And that happened for me, a month or two into my freshman year in college. I wrote a song and I was a songwriter, and that was that. Like, and all I did after that was write songs every day back in that room. And I went to class. Transferred down to, I was at Davis at first, and I transferred down to Berkeley because, you know, they had a better English department, and I wanted to be more challenged that way. It was the best English department in the country then. But also, if I wanted to play in a band, if I was going to keep writing, then I needed to be there. The only bands in Davis were cover bands playing at frat parties. You know, it wasn't going to be what I wanted to do. So I just wrote, I mean, every day. The next year, I moved into a different apartment, but I found a piano in the next complex over, and I would go there in the afternoons, and I would just write every day. I wrote so many songs. It's funny because I don't write very many songs anymore. That stopped when we made our first record. But until then, for years, I just wrote and wrote and wrote. Tons of songs. You know, probably not very good, but they were the best I could do then. So they seemed great to me.
Did you have a journal that you kept them in, or a book, a songbook with
a lot of them,
with the chords put over them and things like that?
Yeah, just like it would say A flat above the word or off to the side. I had a lot of these. I used these like 3/4 spiral notebooks. I always wrote in those for years. In recent years, I've used more on my phone. I write more on my phone just because I carry it with me everywhere I go, and I can hum stuff, which is weird. Because those notebooks were great for that stuff, and you could put them on the piano. But now, I was trying to balance my phone up there. It doesn't work as well, but the phone works great for everything else. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started. I wrote that one song and then never stopped.
Did you play these songs for people?
Oh yeah, right away. That's the first thing you should do if you ever write a song, is play it for a girl. Mm-hmm. I mean, you should get right out, or a guy, whatever your thing is, play it for them. That I realized long before I ever wrote a song. I was probably 13, maybe 14 in my first band, playing bass and singing. And out behind, we were all Jewish kids, and we played at our friends' bar mitzvahs and stuff. And I was out behind Hebrew school one night, and I sang Beth, you know, the Kiss song, to a bunch of girls, and it got this huge response. And I remember thinking, oh, there's a whole other side to this thing. You know, and it was years. I mean, I didn't do anything with that for years because I didn't, unless you're writing songs, I didn't really know what to do as far as how to really express myself in music. But I remember realizing out behind Hebrew school that this a cappella version of Beth was having a huge effect on the girls, which as a 14-year-old is kind of everything.
What were your influences when you were a kid?
I mean, I started with, my parents had a lot of Beatles albums. They had some Supremes and some Fifth Dimension stuff. And I remember listening to that a lot. I really loved the Jackson 5. That's my first concert. But I don't know what makes it influence. Later on, I started getting more into, Santana was a big thing when I was a kid. I camped out in front of a couple places to get in the front row of Santana. There were a couple of venues in the Bay Area where you could, they kept the front 2 or 3 rows GA so that people could line up even if they had tickets, And I did that a few times for Santana shows. I was always floored by how good that band was. I really loved Jay Giles' band back then, Prince. Growing up in Oakland after that, by the time we moved out to California from Texas, Earth, Wind & Fire, the Commodores, P-Funk, that was a really big deal to me. Later on, the early hip-hop stuff like Run DMC. And I still think to this day, 3 Feet High and Rising by De La Soul is probably one of the biggest records of my life. For some reason, I was obsessed with REM, and to the point where I would buy every magazine they were in, everything. I went to see them over and over again. And in my head, I kind of associated Run DMC and REM in a way because they were both very impressionistic to me. Mm-hmm. And that the band REM seemed to play off each other so intuitively. The slap back from the guitar to the vocal to the bass, the way that was all so intertwined with words that didn't necessarily seem to even be real words, a lot of them. But
I don't think they were.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You look up lyrics now, someone has figured out all the words to the songs. I don't know if those are actually the words then.
Right.
And then Run DMC, the way the lyrics flip back and forth between the two of them so fast, you know, because early rap was not like that, you know, like when you listen to Curtis Blow or Sugar Hill Gang, it's not, it's much more set out. But Run DMC, it was all flashing back and forth so quickly, intertwined. You know, you hear that later in like Beastie Boys stuff too, and a lot of other hip hop. But it really, the two guys tripping over each other's words really comes, to me, starts with Run DMC, and maybe I'm missing something too. But who else was I seeing back then that really hit me? Peter Gabriel. You know, I went to the tours. I didn't see the first tour, but I saw pretty much all the ones after that, I think. And that was like the most psychedelic thing I've ever, it was, to me, it felt like taking shrooms, seeing his shows straight. They were so creative and innovative. Without any of the special effects we have now, it felt like special effects at those shows. He was so incredibly creative, and that band was so creative. Murata and Tony Levin. Tony Levin, and yeah, I mean, to me, I listened to like a whole bunch of different kinds of music, and I just really, really loved it. I don't know how any of it affected me as a songwriter, other than I was obsessed with it. You know, growing up in Berkeley, in Oakland, KSAN was a big deal. I don't know if it was a really freeform FM station that played, you know, you could hear a Stones song and then a Miles Davis song and then a George Jones song, you know, and then a Sex Pistols song. It just seemed like it played everything. And so to me, I just thought music was all this shit at once, you know, like it was never any allegiance to a genre. I was never a punk or a retro guy or a country rock or any of those things. I just thought it was all, we were supposed to listen to all of it. It was all really good if it was good. It was all worth obsessing over. And I obsessed over it. I just, you know, and, you know, when I started writing songs, I could see the gap between the quality of what I was doing and what they were doing. You know, it was clear to me that I was a long way from that. But I also felt like I was getting better all the time. And they were the best I could do, you know. But so it always made sense to listen to more music too, because the more you hear, the more you learn.
Yeah.
And I really, that thought process kind of affected me all the way through my career, because I never really wanted to repeat with producers early in our career, because I felt like each guy teaches you, you know, this and this and this, and you need to learn all that stuff. And like, they all have a different kind of effect on you, and you pick up different stuff from it. It wasn't until we made Saturday Nights that I ever repeated with anybody, you know. And then we've worked a lot with Brian Deck since then, and I really love working with Brian. But that's because I feel more capable of making records now and not needing so much education. But I needed the education for a long time.
So how did Counting Crows get started, and what was it like to start playing music with other people and creating music in a unit like that?
It was really cool. I've always really liked the life in a band more than life as a solo artist. I like the jazz of it, is how I put it, I think. You know, I like the interplay. I like the split-second nature of it, how you hear somebody do something and you react, and hopefully they're listening and they react to you, you know, and then it's this stew that happens. When I came down from Davis to Berkeley, I got a job in a recording studio for a while as an assistant engineer, you know, learning about, you know, how to hook up a session, all the wiring and everything, running the machines and cleaning the machines, just doing all that shit. And there was a band in there at one point with the guy who ran the studio, and Jeff Holt at Likewise. And he was playing with his band and some guys he knew. And I was sitting in the booth running the tape machines and sort of scrolling down some lyrics for what they were playing. And when he came in at one point, he's like, "What's this?" I'm like, "Oh, I just was sort of thinking of a tune that goes with this." Nothing. And he's like, why don't you go check it out? Try and sing it on that. And I went in, and they loved it. So then I recorded the song with them, and I was like, oh, wow. That was like the first thing I ever did, but it seemed really cool how it sounded. And a little while after that, I started playing with a band in my friend's attic. We had a little band up there, and one day I was playing the piano and singing. And then one day I came to rehearsal, and there was this other guy playing piano who was really good. I said, hi, I'm Adam. And he's like, oh, I'm Dan. And they go, oh, yeah, this is Dan. He's our keyboard player. I'm like, I thought I was the keyboard player. And they're like, no, you're the singer. He's the keyboard player. It's funny. We eventually we decided to try and, we didn't really play any gigs with that band, one gig. But we went to record at Likewise to do a couple songs that I'd written. And our guitar player had signed up for the Navy, and he actually had to leave right when we were in the middle of doing 2 songs. And so Dan Eisenberg, the keyboard player, called up he said, my best friend's a great guitar player. And he called up Immer.
Wow.
Immer came down and played on it, this song Back to Baltimore. And that's how we met, which is like 1985, I guess, like 40 years ago. And we've been friends and, like dying to play together ever since. I think I learned to really sing. I started doing some sessions for Dave Bryson at his studio, singing backgrounds for people a little while later. And then I did some for Immergluck when he was producing too. And I think he really pushed me to become a better singer and like to sing in ways I didn't know. But anyways, like eventually I was in a band with a bunch of guys called Model Society. And after a couple years, it split up and I was kind of disillusioned. Being in a band is hard because music is something that's mostly for fun for people. And then when you're actually in a band, you fight over stuff and you argue with your friends and it's, not fun all the time, And I got kind of disillusioned by that and I left to go backpack around Europe and, kind of put music behind me. I was going to come home and get on with my life. And while we were gone, Immer joined Camper Van Beethoven.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And he sent me a postcard. I was in Greece and I got this postcard from him, like opening for Camper at the, they were opening for 10,000 Maniacs on tour at the Greek Theater. And I was like, okay, fuck this, man. I got to go home and I got to get back to work. So I did. We started a band when I got home. I had written a couple things over there with Dave Bryson and Marty Jones, who's Mr. Jones. And a couple other guys. Marty played bass, and Marty's cousin, Toby, played drums. And Lydia Holly from Dave Bryson's earlier band played keyboards. And we started a band, and we played a bunch. We wrote a bunch of songs. And then after like a while, we sort of split up. And I joined Himalayans, which I really loved. And I played some acoustic stuff with Bryson off and on. We'd play some open mics. And we got together and recorded some stuff over the years. Like that first band, we recorded about 5 songs with them. Because Dave had this studio, Dancing Dog. And then there was another version that had some different guys that we recorded some songs in the middle. And then at one point we got together a few years later and we were like, who do we want to record? I've got some new songs I've written. The thing I loved about being in the Himalayans was that I was not the band leader. We were kind of just a commune, basically. We were, very democratic, and I didn't write any music. I just wrote all the lyrics over other people's music, and it was much more experimental and loud and psychedelic, and it was great to be in that band and not have responsibility after trying to lead a band and fighting with everybody before that. But as much as I loved it, I'd been writing more stuff and thinking maybe I was ready to try something else again, and Dave and I got together, and this time we got his bass player Matt from his band Mr. Dog, and Steve Bowman, who was in a band, a Mad Affair, that rehearsed downstairs from Dancing Dog, and I brought in Charlie Gillingham because I had played a bunch of gigs with Charlie. He was in other bands. We'd open for a band he was in, or they'd open for Himalayans, and I always thought he was really great. And so we kind of picked these people we wanted to play with, and we did another set of recording sessions, and they just turned out amazing. They were great. At one point, Dave and I were playing like an acoustic set at Paradise Lounge upstairs in a little room where like the stage was like a triangle corner of the room, like from here to there. It was tiny. And this guy from, what was the label? EMI came to see us play. And then he said, I really love you guys. Will you come down to LA like in a week? I'd like to hear, like you to come by and talk to you about some stuff, And we went down there, and it was weird, He asked us to stop by EMI at like 6:30 at night. So it was after no one's there. It was dark. He let us in the building, and we went to his office, and he turned out to be VP in charge of soundtracks there.
Okay.
So he was a real record company vice president, but not an A&R guy.
Right.
But he really loved the band. He had this idea. He wanted to sign us to a development deal.
Okay.
And give us enough money to make a video for Round Here. And he described it to us. He said, I want to film it at the place I saw you play last week, at the Paradise Lounge, you know, and what I want is it'll be a curtain of lasers coming down, and the song will start. Round Here was a Himalayan song that David and I had been covering in our acoustic shows and open mic stuff, you know, and you'll start walking forward as the song starts, and eventually you'll come through the lasers, you know, the curtain of lasers, and you'll be wearing black pants, black turtlenecks, black sports coats, and, you know, like Simon and Garfunkel, basically. You know?
Yeah.
I'm in this really loud psychedelic band, Himalayans, that I love. I'm having the best time. And I am interested in like writing songs and having a band, but I'm not really interested in this. But at the same time, it's like nobody from any record company has ever come to see me. I'm 27 years old. I think he came to see us the day after my 27th birthday.
Okay.
You know, so like I've been in the clubs for
years
8
now.
years, 6 years, you know,
Yeah.
and it doesn't seem like anyone's noticing anything we're doing. You know, the crowds are pretty good because I come from other bands. Himalayans is pretty successful. I feel like we need a lawyer, you know, and so we eventually call up my friend's dad, who's a lawyer, and he's got a friend who has a friend who does entertainment law, and that guy has a friend who works in a law office doing entertainment law in LA. It's like literally 5 people removed.
Okay.
And that guy is a big music lawyer.
Okay.
And so we get his information and we send him a tape. And meanwhile, we've started to play a couple gigs with this band, this version of Counting Crows that we've just put together for this recording session. The thing about the tape we sent is that, you know, a demo should have like a song, maybe 2 songs, most 3. Otherwise, you expose that you suck. You know, like that's what happens, and that your songwriting sucks. Our tape had 15 songs on it or so, which is like real Rube territory.
Yeah.
But among those songs are Round Here, Mr. Jones, Rain King, Anna Begins, Omaha. It might just be those 5, plus a bunch of other songs that I was writing that were pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But that I never considered for the record because I didn't think they were good enough for that. But they're pretty hooky, fun songs. And Dave was a really good producer, especially of demos. You know, so this is like, it's a pretty strong demo, you know, and the guy calls back like a day later and says, I remember the phone call because he's like, hey, I just wanted to say, I pick up the phone, he's like, hey, I just wanted to say this is fantastic. I'm really excited. I just have to finish listening to it. I'll call you back, okay? And I said, okay, and he hung up and I was like, who the hell was that? And then the phone rings like 3 seconds later and he's like, I'm sorry. This is Alan Leonard. I'm the lawyer you sent the tape to. I'll call you in the morning. I'm like, okay, you know. And by that time, we've played a couple shows with this band and we're getting big crowds because Dave comes from Mr. Dog and his band that used to be managed by Bill Graham, and they were pretty successful. Charlie was in a bunch of different bands with Dan Vickery. I come from Himalayans and from Model Society before that, and had mailing lists for all of them. So we were pretty...
Like an all-star band.
We were pretty popular right away.
Yeah.
You know, we had like big mailing lists, you know, and for what that's worth. And this guy calls and wants us to come down to LA, and this lawyer now,
Yeah.
you know, and so... We went down, and he, it turns out, was like Tom Petty's lawyer, and he represented Warner Chappell Publishing. He was a real legitimate, big-time music lawyer. And we met with him, and he was flipping out over the stuff. And he said, you know, it was like on a Friday. He's like, if you want to stay till Monday, I manage these. I represent these managers, and I played them some of your stuff, and they really love you. And it was Steve Jensen and Martin Kirkup. We stuck around till Monday, and we met with them that afternoon, and they managed the B-52s and Joe Jackson, OMD, Danzig, you know, everyone, Sam Phillips, everyone they managed was already signed and was successful. Tony Childs. They didn't have any unsigned bands. And we met with them, we talked with them in the afternoon. I remember Dave and I left, their office was right on La Cienega at Santa Monica. So it was right across the street from Barney's Beanery. And we went there after that. And we sat down and we had a couple beers. And I remember thinking, oh, that's it. Like, we're either going to get signed or we're just not good enough. Because these guys can walk into any record company in America. It's like, they can get our music to everybody. And I was a little unprepared for that because I was really enjoying being in Counting Crows and leading a band again. I'd kind of felt like I was kind of ready, but I was also really loving Himalayans. And I was playing in Sorted Humor, this other band with Immer, where Immer was playing bass. I was singing backgrounds of Sorted Humor. I was in like 3 or 4 bands then. And I really loved it. I was like out every night, either rehearsing or playing or seeing a friend play. I could walk into anywhere in any club in San Francisco and I knew people. You know, my friends were there. They were either playing a gig or I was, you know, like.
It was a scene.
It was. And I was in like a lot of bands. I didn't know what to do exactly, but.
Did you feel it was going to limit you if you just were playing in the one band?
No. I was going to really miss being in Himalayans. Like, I loved that band. I liked it, you know. I liked it more than Counting Crows all the way up till right around then. Because all the versions that we played in before that, the acoustic shows with just me and Dave, I didn't want to be like the open mic acoustic shows, that wasn't my thing. The first version never played live, and it was kind of a little more jazzy. And this was like a real band. Like, and it wasn't until this version of Counting Crows that I was like, wow, I love playing in this band. I mean, I really did. I loved it. But I loved Himalayans too. I really did. And it was great not to be the man. It was great not to be responsible for everything. Just to be part of this thing the 4 of us were doing. 5 of us at that point in Himalayans. You know, like, there was a real freedom and a real lack of weight to the responsibility in it that was just great fun. And you've heard people say this a million times where they're doing something they really like and then it gets hard and they're like, you know, and it wasn't fun anymore. That's the line that divides artists from people with hobbies. You know, because hobbies are fun and they should be. And you should enjoy yourself. It should be a nice way to decompress from everything else. Art can be enjoyable, but it's not supposed to be. And that's not the deal. It's not what it's about. I mean, it's great if it's fun, but it's not going to be fun all the time. And it's hard, and it should be hard. And you're gonna be miserable and hate it at times, or just hate the experience, not the thing. Because it's real, it's your whole life. And that's different, you know? And when I left Model Society originally, I didn't know that yet. But by this time, I do know that's true because I really, really, really want to play music. And it's easier in Himalayans. And it's great and fun. And I don't have a lot of responsibility, but I've been writing all these songs and I really want to learn to make this music that I've got. And that's going to take being a band leader. And I don't really want to do that as much. But I also understand at this point the difference between what was a hobby and is now possibly going to be my life, you know, if this works out, you know.
So how did you get from there to getting your record deal?
Well, they took that demo and sent it around, and every single record company in the world offered us a contract right after that. This is all happening in the summer, and then maybe late January, February, we start working with Stephen Martin at Direct Management, and I think in either January or February, we had these 2 gigs, one at the Kennel Club in San Francisco, another at the I-Beam, and they were both BMI showcases. So they had a lot of bands playing and record company guys coming, and the Monday after the second gig, we got offers from, every record company there was. It was, the only ones that didn't were like the ones that they didn't want to compete with themselves. So Epic and Columbia, if you're going to get a contract with Sony, one or the other.
Yeah, they're same.
You know, Mercury didn't fight with Virgin. I can't remember what they, you know.
And you guys signed to, was it DGC?
Yeah.
Was Gary Gersh the head of the label at the time?
No, he was our A&R guy though.
Okay.
The head of the label was Eddie Rosenblatt. He was president of the label. I mean, what happened was we went to visit a lot of the record companies, and it really came down to A&M and Asylum, Elektra, I guess, at that point. Steve Rabowski was at Elektra, and then Gary at Geffen, and David Anderle was at A&M. They were all really good. I felt like they had a good grasp on things for the band, all 3 of them. And those are good labels. It kind of came down to the fact that Geffen
was very hot then, really.
Not quite yet. They had a lot of stuff on Geffen. I don't know if Nirvana had really happened yet at that point.
It was right around that time.
Yeah, it was right around the first album, not the first album, the second album. Nevermind might have come out by then. They also had Maria McKee, Peter Gabriel, the Sundays, the Posies, Teenage Fan Club,
Guns N' Roses.
Sonic Youth. But these are all the DGC ones.
The DGC,
Sonic
that's
Youth.
right, that's
and
right.
then you also had the Guns N' Roses, Nelson, Aerosmith thing on
actual
yeah,
Geffen.
Zootout and Ladner had those.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
But Geffen offered us complete creative control. You know, they offered us like a higher royalty rate and complete creative control and like a 3 solid records.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I mean, we got some of that same stuff from Elektra and from A&M, as far as like 2 or 3 records. But the creative control thing was a big deal to me.
Huge.
Like, there are ways in which they can make that not mean anything, because they can say,
Sure.
oh, well, you can do this, but
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you do this, then this happens, you know?
Right, of course.
But I mean, it required trading away all the money, basically. And we did. There was a lot of money available. But it was advance money, you know? But it was millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And we traded all that away to have complete creative control and a higher royalty. So we had to pay back less, and we got a great royalty. And we got to run our own show, which was cool because Gary left right after that to become the head of Capitol.
Capitol.
So he
That's
wasn't
right.
even there.
That's
by the
right.
time- we finished the record. He was gone by the time we finished the record. Eddie Rosenblatt left after the next record. Before the next record, sorry. So when Satellites came out, and by the time Desert Life came out, it was... Interscope was running Geffen, really.
Right.
It was,
It was
Ted Fields.
It was just a
and-
label. It was just
Yeah.
a name at that point.
Yeah, so and Interscope had been swallowed by Universal by our 4th record. So
Yeah.
we never went through a record with the same staff. There was no 2 records in a row ever that had the staff for us. But, you know, we settled on Geffen because the creative control thing was a big deal to me.
So did you really never have a proper A&R person that was overseeing what you guys were doing?
Well, we did for a lot of the first record, but Gary left. But Gary was still, you know, I lived in his house a lot of the time back then. So he was present. But I'm just saying, as far as being staff of the record, he was gone by the time it came out.
Yeah.
He was gone. He was gone before we mixed. But he still was there to like get advice from. By our second record, we had Tony Berg, who was great for Recovering the Satellites. He was a fantastic A&R guy. And Gary was too. He just was gone, you know. But he still would come to the studio, and, you know, we were working at Cello or Ocean Way, which isn't far from Capitol.
Was T-Bone the producer of the first record?
Yeah.
How did you make that decision?
Well, we looked at a bunch of people. We looked at, it kind of came down to Don Dixon, T-Bone, George Drakoulias. I just felt like T-Bone and me had a good understanding for, like, we hadn't been a band for very long. You know, this is maybe we had been a band for like 3 or 4 months when we got signed. Wow. As far as this version of Counting Crows.
Amazing.
We sounded a little like late model Roxy music, like Avalon, and I didn't think that was right. The hardest thing to differentiate when you're starting out as an artist is it's very easy to associate good with what those other guys did who were good. And you know it's good because they did it. So your guitar player may be really influenced by Stone Roses because they were a very influential guitar band then.
Yeah.
And he sounds a lot like that. And your bass player may play a lot of fretless basses because he's really into that. And your drummer maybe has a million drums because he likes Stuart Copeland or somebody else. You know what I mean? And then becoming who you are can be kind of hard. That's the first thing you have to shed is that idea that good is what other people who are good have done. And I felt like we really needed to get in the studio and sit around in a circle and learn to listen to each other. Learn to not play what we wanted to play, but what we played because that guy did that and this guy did this and that made me want to do this. And T-Bone got that, which is a rough thing because it means you have to go into the studio. You've struggled your whole life to get anyone to notice you. They notice you because of what you've done. You get in the studio and your lead singer says, "This is great, we're signed. Now we have to take everything you're doing away. No more effects on the guitars. No more fretless basses. You're gonna buy an old Hofner and a Vox. You know, Charlie, I love the synths, but not right now. Just get a piano and a Hammond.
Natural sounds.
Just not because I believe in natural sounds or anything like that, but just because we needed to get everything out and just learn to play together. And so we took everything away. Because by the time we make the second album, I'm ready to have really loud guitars and
Yeah.
do other stuff. But first we needed to learn to be a band because we hadn't been one for very long. And we hadn't had any time to do that. We were just like a bunch of guys from other bands who got together with some songs we really liked. And we were doing this thing all together, but it was like we were, you know, taken from all these different places. We weren't so much a band as we were a group of influences.
Was T-Bone's being a musician himself, was that helpful?
I don't know. I mean, T-Bone's a great producer, wherever that comes from.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's necessarily a quantifiable thing, because unlike somebody like Steve Lillywhite, who we worked with later,
Yeah.
he didn't have a drum sound.
Right.
You know, like, or something like that, you know. He just got it. He helped a lot of bands make great first albums, because I think he helped them discover who they were, you know, and without applying a lot of who I am on top of that, you know, like, he has a bit of a mastermind problem at times, but he's a genius about knowing the right thing at the right time. Like, he also gets distracted and like does a million things at once. Like, he was doing a bunch of other records while we were doing our record because we were taking so long, probably. But you could work for days when he wasn't there.
Okay.
And try so many different things, all of which is time wasted, because he would walk right in and go, oh no, that's terrible. Just do this. And you do it and it's fucking genius. It's great.
Hey, wait, where were you guys recording at the time?
We had a house in Brentwood up in the hills.
Okay.
I think it's like a consulate now. It was this, you know, LA's always had a lot of white elephant houses where people, in a building spree, everybody builds something and then it collapses, the market collapses and no one can sell anything. And there are always these empty houses to work in. So we found different empty houses. The first 4 records were all recorded in houses.
Right.
With some overdub time in studios. Like, we definitely spent some time at cello on the first album, here on the second album.
Okay.
But always started out, we'd get in these houses and we would build studios. Dave had a friend who was a really good like sound designer. And so we would, you know, he would seal the windows and put stuff in, and Dave had a studio, so he knew how to set one up. You know, the first album we rented a bunch of equipment, but the second album we bought everything, with stuff we've been using ever since.
I saw you had a little kind of making of video for the second record, where you show the process of getting the place and kind of putting the studio together. So that was, I assume, the same in the first record then.
Yeah, we did the same kind of thing. We found this big house that had a big open space in the middle, and had like a loft over that living room area, and it was like kind of a dining room, and we made that into a control room, and we played down in the main room, and it was just so great. I was really worried about taking this band that was so new and so inexperienced and so, I felt like, crippled with, this is the wrong word for it, saddled with a lot of influences is better word for it, into a studio where then everybody's trying to be perfect and trying to get it right as opposed to get it good. I was really worried about doing that. And Gary actually introduced us to Robbie Robertson, and we went to Robbie's room at Villager Quarter.
Yeah, had one upstairs there.
Yeah, and we went and talked to Robbie about it. And while we were there, it was just kind of a fun way to meet Robbie. But while we were talking to him, I said, look, I have this worry. I'm really concerned that we're going to get in the studio with literally so much inexperience, and everyone's just going to try and play perfect instead of playing good. And I don't think that's what we need. I'm really worried about how the pressure of a big time recording studio will land on everybody. And he's like, why don't you just rent a house? That's what we did. I thought, oh, that's a great fucking idea. And so that's what we did. That's why we did it.
Would you guys work on finding a take of a song that had a lot of the elements, and then if there was a mistake, you'd punch in, and is that kind of how you did it?
It kind of, like, it was different for different songs.
Yeah.
You know, you try to get something that feels right. To me, it was always important to get it drum and vocal.
Yeah.
You don't have to keep that vocal, and you can comp it from other things, but you got to get something that feels right between the drum and the vocal. That's where it has to work. And sometimes you get everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't. But like, you really had to get something that felt right. I didn't know how to get that then because I'd never made a record before.
Now, some songs, like Mr. Jones, you said was a song that was an early song, so you had that.
Yeah.
I just want to play it just for a second.
He dances while his father plays guitar. She's suddenly beautiful, and we all want something beautiful. Man, I wish I was beautiful. So come dance the silence down through the morning. Sha la 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 la, yeah. Yeah. Cut up, Maria. Show me some of them Spanish dances and pass me a bottle, Mr. Jones. Believe in me, help me believe in anything, 'cause I wanna be someone who believes. Yeah, Mr. Jones and me tell each other fairy tales, and we stare through beautiful women. She's looking at you, oh no, no, she's looking at me, smiling in the bright light.
So I hear this live sound here. It sounds like a live band take. Now you probably don't remember 35 years later.
Oh, I remember a lot about what a pain in the ass that song was.
Okay, tell me about it.
Well, our drummer hated the song.
Okay.
Just hated it. Said he didn't sign up to play country music. And I think this is a quote. I didn't sign up to play country music. I might as well wear a straw hat and stick a blade of grass in my mouth playing this fucking thing. And I was like, this is not a country song at all. It's only a country song because you're making it sound like a country song. It was like, he just hated the song, and it made it really hard to play because he just could not get a feel for it.
Mm-hmm.
He just kept saying it was country, and we're all like, I mean, to me, it's like a soul song. It's, but whatever it is, it's like, there's a way to play it, and it made it so hard to sing over it. And finally, he just fought and fought and fought over why this thing was even going to be on the record. It was such a pain in the ass. And by this time, we're out of the house. We're still trying to get a track for this song, and we're in cello by now. Like, this is like, we spent 2 or 3 months in that house. So when I tell you we didn't have Mr. Jones yet.
So how many times did you end up recording it?
A fucking 1,000 times. I have no idea. But I mean, what happened was, and they were all terrible, just like terrible, terrible versions of the song. We finally came to the studio one day, Ocean Way, cello, whatever it's called then.
Yeah.
And we come in, and I walk in with Steve, I think, and T-Bone's in this room. We were mostly doing overdubbing stuff, and then there's a room, and T-Bone's talking to this guy in a room, and Steve looks at him and goes, the guy's playing drums, and Steve goes, oh my God, that's fucking Denny Fongheiser. It's Denny Fongheiser. He's the greatest fucking drummer. And I was like, oh, no, cool. Yeah, I know the name, I wouldn't have recognized him, We go in there, and T-Bone's like, hey, Steve, this is Denny Fongheiser. And Steve's like, man, I'm such a big fan. I really love you. I mean, you did this and this and this. I think you're so good. And Denny's like, thank you. He's, what are you doing here? And T-Bone says, well, Steve, I got to feeling bad the other day because I'm always browbeating you about Mr. Jones, and I get you don't like it, and I get that you don't. You know what? Who am I to be telling you what you have to play? And Steve's like, thank you. He's like, so I've got Denny to come in, and he's gonna play drums on Mr. Jones, and that way you don't have to. And it's like, why should you have to do something you don't want to do? I mean,
That's great.
It was shitty. it was a mean way to do it, and he did it that way.
Oh my God.
It was brutal. But then Denny, like in 2 takes, nailed the song, and then we could do the song over it. Like it was.
Yeah.
So, and then it got pretty great. But by that time, I was so in my head about singing it that I struggled. I could not get a good vocal. Mm-hmm. I must have sung that song 100 times. And finally, one day, I just nailed it. There was 2 songs I was struggling with, were Rain King and Mr. Jones. Mm-hmm. There's something about, they're not complete rock songs, and they're not slow songs. They're kind of, well, I call it a lope. They're kind of a lope. Mm-hmm. The pace of them is somewhere in the middle. They have to rock, but they have to have this real pocket and backbeat to them. So they have to swing and they have to rock. And I was just having so much trouble getting the feel right in the vocals. I don't know why. It took ages, in multiple studios. And finally one day we were just at some other studio. I don't remember where it was. And I just kind of nailed it. Nailed both of them. That night I got both songs. And it was like, oh, okay, yeah, these are great now. But it was really fucking hard with that one, especially just because Steve hated the song. I don't know why. He just had it in his head that it was a country song. I could never understand why he felt that way, but thinking that way, he played it that way, and it ruined it over and over again. You know, like, and you know, he kind of made it a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, the song sucked because he was playing it like a country song, and it wasn't a country song.
When I heard that song, I was like, "This is a good song. I like this song." And then I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and I remember seeing you guys on MTV. But it wasn't until I heard this that I was like, wow.
Yeah, this is the song to me.
Yeah.
The song that makes the band.
Yeah.
Step out the front door like a ghost into a fog where no one notices the contrast of white on white. And in between the moon and you, the angels get a better view of the crumbling difference between wrong and right. Well, I walk in the air between the rain, through myself and back again, where I don't know. Maria says she's dying. Through the door I hear her crying. Why? I don't know.
That is such a beautiful melody. The notes that you choose to kind of bounce off on the dissonant, I call them like haunting tones, the really melancholy dissonances that you have against the chord changes and the flow of the lyric, everything about that with that mournful guitar.
It's weird, you know, that's a Himalayan song. Mm-hmm. That's one that was completely different sounding in that band. And I think I was able to write that because I wasn't writing music. We were jamming in the studio one day and I sang. We would, you know, record everything to like 4-track rehearsals. And, you know, by the end of rehearsal, the song was pretty much there, you know. I used to write a lot off the top of my head. When we changed it to make it a Counting Crow song, it opened the song up for me so much because it's a completely different feel. The Himalayan song is a doom, doom, doom. It's real driving rock song. Mm-hmm. It opened up the song for me in ways that allowed me to like really feel the lyric because it like relaxed it so much. Mm-hmm. And I was so used to singing it because it was a Himalayan song that I didn't struggle at all with this song. The struggle on this song was, you know, this is before Pro Tools.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and so it's really hard to overdub stuff, and it's hard to punch in because you're punching on tape. It's not impossible, of course, but it's harder. And
very difficult on a song like that.
Yeah.
Did you have a click playing at the same time along with the guitar?
I never really liked clicks very much. I probably just sang to the guitar.
Okay.
But Dave Bryson's the one who struggled on this one because that do-do-do-do-do-do. It's all, the whole song, he does that through the whole song, except for the choruses maybe. And so when we were trying to record that, it was him and Pat McCarthy, our engineer.
Yeah.
Days of do-do-do-do-do.
Right, to get every note.
Yeah. Like, I don't think it needs to be as perfect, but Dave's very much a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's really perfectly played in the song.
And I thought Pat was going to open his veins at some point. He'd just been in the control room, because T-Bone is not sticking around for there's no fucking way. And it went on for days and days of just that, like, and trying to punch it. You know, we better do this whole verse over because that punch that punch fucked it up. You know what? Let's just do this verse over.
Oh my
just
God.
Endless. It went on, I don't know how long. In my memory, it's like a week of it. And there's no way it was. But like, I remember Pat was just like, as the guy and having to record an engineer was just like, fuck this, man, I quit.
When I hear this, I thought to myself, there's no way that Adam sings it exactly the same every time. There's so much improvisation. Oh, yeah. It seems like in your performances.
Yeah, but there's a gravity that's there.
There's a gravity, a melodic shape and everything, but I have a feeling that every take was different.
Yeah, that I don't remember. But, it just felt, I think this one felt pretty natural right away. Like I realized how to sing it. And I had a lot of experience singing it too, because I'd been singing it at Himalayan song, and I sang it in open mics with Dave as an acoustic song. Which there's a version of that on the Storytellers thing, how we used to do it, you know. And then we kind of developed this version with the band. It was maybe one of the first things we ever recorded together, was coming up with this version. I just felt like I really understood this song and where it should come from. I always felt like this was the most important song on the record. And I think it's the song that made us too. Like, I think Mr. Jones was a hit on the radio and on MTV. and the record wasn't even in the top 200. We played that on Saturday Night Live, and the record jumped 40 spots a week for
to
6
me,
weeks.
this was
Yeah.
I 100% agree. This is the song that grabbed me. Everyone that I knew that was a Counting Crows fan, this was the song that pulled them in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Mr. Jones was a great introductory. We all thought Mr. Jones was a great introductory track. We all thought the hit was Rain King, and Round Here was the defining moment. You know, like. But back then, you used to release introductory tracks before.
That's right. You wanted an
singles.
up-tempo song
Yeah.
as your first single.
I mean,
that
we
was
really.
a big thing.
That's what Mr. Jones was supposed to be. It was the introductory track that just blew up.
Yeah.
But even like I said, even as much as it blew up, it didn't change anything. It didn't catch on with anybody. It just was a popular radio song probably, but it was Round Here on Saturday Night Live that blew the band through the stratosphere. It's just that after a while, radio stations don't want to play Round Here, it's too long. So Mr. Jones stayed on the radio all these years, whereas Round Here didn't. But yeah, it was always about Round Here to me. That's like it's the defining song for our band. And so many of the things that we became and that we did were based off that song. The improvisation in live shows, breaking down in the middle of that song and Rain King and trying different things. That exploration in Round Here and Rain King that we did in a million songs over the years that we finally recorded a version of in Palisades Park, years later, and now with the suite from Butter Miracle.
When you hear this now, once again, does it bring you right back to that time? What kind of feelings do you get when you hear it?
It's funny, Mr. Jones just reminded me of all the problems in the studio, and
this is kind of the opposite.
but Round Here, you can feel the drama. I feel like it's real. It sounds really live and really dramatic, and I haven't heard it in years. I don't know when the last time I listened to it was. But yeah, it sounded really good. I tend to not go back and listen to that record. I listen to other records more. If I'm listening to our stuff, I tend to not listen to that record, but Round Here sounded really good right then.
Right then, I mean, through these speakers, for a record that was recorded, 34 years ago, it sounds phenomenal.
Yeah, I think that's mixed by Scott Litt. Too. I can't remember which songs on the record he mixed.
Now, was that because of your love of R.E.M., or did he just happen to be the person that you had mix it?
Well, I think he had just mixed some Nirvana stuff right then,
He did the
too.
two,
The singles from In Utero, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. He was someone who had been doing some mixing right then, and we, some of the songs needed a little better mixes, I think, than we got at first, and so we picked 4 or 5 songs that Scott did. I don't think he did all the whole. I don't really remember, but I don't think he did the whole record. I think we picked some songs, and he did Rain King, Round Here, Mr. Jones. But he was just someone who had, I loved his work as a producer, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But he was. I don't remember if we talked to Scott Litt right then, or if it was just Don Dixon. I was really concentrating on how we were going to form this band into what it was going to be, and so. I think I was more likely to be thinking of people like Don Dixon and Mitch Easter, who had worked, early on, or George Dekulius, who had done that work with
the Two Crows records there.
Yeah, and also the Maria McKee records at the
right.
time, and the Jayhawks stuff. He'd done a bunch of stuff, that I thought was a little less. By that time, R.E.M. had it all figured out, and they were doing these big things. I didn't think we were ready to work with Scott. But I did think he could be a great mixer for us. But I don't really remember the thought process, except that I know we went to him at one point because he had just mixed some stuff that was really good, I thought.
So the record comes out and it becomes a huge record, and you guys are a huge band. I had read, I don't know if these, the things that you read at the time, but about when you were writing for the second record, did you bartend at the Viper Room or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for a long time.
And did you do that because you were looking for lyrical inspiration?
No, just seemed like a great place to meet girls. I mean, I didn't know any. I mean, I needed to get out of Berkeley. There were people camped out on my lawn. I could not leave the house without it being an issue. People were coming up to me wherever I was, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't live there anymore. I couldn't come out of my bedroom without it being an issue because they could see through the front window of my house, And the only people I really knew in LA, I knew my friend Randall Slavin, and I knew a bunch of people that worked at the Viper Room. I knew Sal Janko and Johnny, and I got a phone call one day. I had just gotten home from I'd been home for maybe a week, 8 days from the last tour, a year and a half of touring on August. And I was miserable. I couldn't go anywhere. It was just I loved Berkeley, and it was terrible.
It ruined it for you.
Yeah, it really did. I got a phone call one day, and it was Johnny and Sal, and they started to talk to me for a minute, and then one of them was like, "What is wrong?" And I said, I told them what was going on. And they put me on hold, and they were gone for like 10 minutes. I was sitting there at my house on hold, and they came back and they said, "Okay, we've got you a room at the Barouch and a reservation on the 7 o'clock flight or the 6 o'clock, I don't know what flight it was, early evening, from Oakland to Burbank.
Okay.
Someone will pick you up at the airport. Just come down here. We're having a party tonight. It's Kate Moss's 21st birthday. You have got to get the fuck out of there." And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And I left. And I went down there. They had closed the Viper Room down that night. I went to this insane party with like, in the age of supermodels, they were all in this little room.
Okay.
Plus, like Tom Petty and I want to say Adam Ant and Billy Gibbons. I don't know if I met William Burroughs that night or not, but it was that kind of thing. You like the Hughes brothers, who directed Menace to Society, and they were all there. Because that place was really Chucky Weiss. It was a clubhouse. Ben Montench, who I knew from Maria, and Maria, some of the people in Maria's band maybe. It was just great, and I felt welcomed, and I think it was the difference between a struggling artist town and a working artist town, because in a struggling artist town, when you make it, there's a lot of jealousy. And in a working artist town, people just want to know what you're doing now and tell you about what they're doing. And I had, grown up in the Bay Area, I hated LA. But I got down there that night and everyone was great. I stayed at the Barouch for a few days, and then I got a bungalow at the Sunset Marquis. And then eventually I would go to the Viper Room every night, and Shannon McManus, who is the bartender there, managed the place. She came to me one day and she said, "Hey, my friend Christina she built a new house, and she has this cottage in Laurel Canyon, and she wants to get someone to rent it, but she wants to be someone she likes. Let me drive you up there, and you should meet her." It turned out to be Christina Applegate. And she had this house that used to be like Tom Mix's house. And it was David Niven's in-town fuck pad at one point, just this cottage in Laurel Canyon. And they found me a place to live, and so I would go there every night. And after a while, I started hanging out on the other side of the bar because it was just less crowded. And then, at some point, Shannon's like, "Hey, I gotta go to the bathroom. Or I need to smoke. Do you know how to run the cash machine?" I was like, "Yeah, I can run the register." So I just, by the time she got back, I had made a fucking fortune in tips for her. Because I browbeat everybody into paying. These women are working, you need to get them a bit of tip. And I just loved it. I just would go there every night, and I made great tips for the bartenders. And I got to meet people without being surrounded by people.
Right.
Because I had something to do as opposed to like just sitting there trying to make small talk. I was fixing drinks and getting beers, and I was comfortable. And I have a lot of mental illness problems. I have a lot of anxiety. I have trouble in crowds. But I felt good on that side of the bar among people I knew and who cared about me and who looked out for me. Everybody was just my friend, and it was home. And I would go there every night, and I would be there till 3 a.m, whenever we closed.
So what was going on with the band at the time? So the record is done, the tour is done, and then you're going to be making a second record at some point. Were they saying, "Hey, what are we going to do?"
Yeah, I'd forgotten about this. Charlie reminded me in this interview he did about it. He's like, "Yeah, he called me one time to see what was going on," because I was out of my mind by the end of those tours. And I'm like, "I'm not in a band right now. I'll call you back. Not right now." I had a few songs already written, but I just needed a break. I needed a little bit of life and a little bit of time to just get used to being me again, because what I thought was life as me had completely changed. It had become a circus. And I just needed to be a human being again for a little bit. It wasn't too long. It was like probably 6 months, maybe. I don't know. I discovered I loved life in LA. I love being around so many creative people. I love being around so many dreamers. Like, whatever they came out here for, everybody here decided not to do what everyone else in their high school class did. You know, they all left home to come here for whatever reason that was, whatever dream it was, whether it's like something you might really be into, like being a painter or a sculptor or a director or a writer or just like being a model. But whatever it was, they got the fuck out of where they were and they came here. And I kind of loved being a part of that because that's kind of my whole life, in that my family had moved around so much when I was a kid. I never knew anybody. I was always new everywhere. And then I kind of came to this place where everyone was new and everyone was doing stuff like I did. I mean, later on I got really tired of that. You know, at some point you want to talk to a doctor about medicine. Right. Not about the script they pitched, you know what I mean? And that's one of the reasons I moved to New York, but that was years later, you know? At first it was just great to be in a place where I wasn't the only one doing shit like that, you know? Like, and everyone was just really supportive. And the Viper Room was this insane place that was like what I imagined the left bank of the Seine was, you know, in 1910 or something, you know, when Picasso was hanging out with, you know, Gertrude Stein and who knows who else, de Tocqueville, you know, and they're all just, and Hemingway, you know, and they're all these creative people are just sort of hanging out. We're on Sunset Boulevard every Sunday. Gibby Haynes is teaching me, you know, from the Butthole Surfaces, teaching me to how to barbecue. You know, like it was just like I watched Adam Ant one night in the booth with Allen Ginsberg sitting next to me, eating Mexican food together. You know, like I was an English major. I met Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs in a bar. Like, where do you have that kind of experience? That's like what I read about reading the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas when, you know, Gertrude Stein is talking about hanging with Hemingway and Picasso. I'm like, I'm hanging with Gibby Haynes and Billy Gibbons every night and Tom Petty and Ben Montench and like William Burroughs. Like, I mean, it was fucking amazing.
Interesting thing to think about for people watching this is that this is still really pre-internet.
Oh yeah, the internet is just started, because what I remember is that year when I was living in that cottage, I realized that AOL had these message boards for every band. And I went on the message board, and you know, I've disappeared for a few months at this point. I'm just starting to get really excited. I've really enjoyed these months in LA, and I am so excited to make a record now, because I know how to make records now. I'm not intimidated. I know how to do it, and we've got a new electric guitar player, and we've got a better drummer, and I know we can make a fucking rock record, and an epic record, and I'm so excited about it. And I go on AOL, and I'm reading all the message boards, and they're all
Were you thinking to yourself, what is this? Or you knew what it was, right?
Well, I mean, I'd been into computers kind of, but no, the message board thing had escaped me until this moment, and I just realized, oh man, they're all worried. Is this band ever gonna make a second album? Do they exist anymore? Are they breaking up? What happened? Adam, like everybody knew I kind of flipped out.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh, they've got all these questions. I've got all the answers. All I have to do is somehow convince them it's me. And I went on there and I like told them I was, and nobody believed me. And then I convinced them. And I realized like, oh, this is an interesting thing, because up till this point, we've always had to go through a radio station.
Sure.
Or we've had to go through
to connect with your fans.
There were all these middlemen. And all of a sudden I'm in my computer, dial up.
Oh yeah.
And I'm on AOL and I'm just talking to people. And I realized, oh, this is a whole thing. This thing connects.
This thing could be big.
It could connect everyone in the world for free.
Right.
You know, which is like, you have to pay to do this usually. You have to pay for advertisement. You have to, you know, hope that your interview comes out the way you want it to. You're always going through these middlemen, and it's all under their control. But what if you could just talk to everybody? And so I started doing it all the time, and we built up a whole community on that message board.
Amazing.
And I still hear from people that were on that now, who were kids. They were 16-year-old kids back then on that message board, and now they're in their 40s or something. And they're, you know, they always, when they write something on Instagram or something else, they identify like from the board, you know. And they're, you know, this guy Zach, I remember. There were like really cool people, you know. A lot of them were just kids, but like, it really occurred to me, I have to be diligent about this, because this is the real thing. This is free connection to anyone in the world. We could base a lot of stuff in our band off this, and we really did early on. I mean, I missed the boat with Instagram, but I was there for Twitter. I built our Twitter from nothing to like millions early on. I didn't quite see Instagram, and I kind of fell behind a little bit then. But early on, I was really into the whole internet thing. I just thought, And I knew I was just about to go in to make a record. This is the perfect time to be telling everybody about what's going on. And I was so excited to make that record because I knew what we could do.
Recovering the Satellites was a radical departure stylistically from the first record. Why Gil Norton? Actually, a lot of great reasons. Gil Norton is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that what I wanted to do, because there was a lot of pressure to go and do another record with T-Bone. Certainly, a record company wanted that. But I knew these songs were different. You know, the first song I had for the record was Children in Bloom. And then I think the second was Goodnight Elizabeth. So I have these really big, funky psychedelic number, but I've also got a number that's not that far off from Stuff on August and Everything After. And then I wrote, Catapult came up in rehearsal with all of us and Angels of the Silences. You know, there were songs that came out, but there was a range that wasn't on August, you know, and I just felt like Gil had made all those Pixies records that were really big deals for me.
Oh, yeah.
Foundational in a lot of ways that you wouldn't have heard, but that were. And I just knew he could do it. I knew he had that kind of range. He also had made, like, the Laws record.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and he had done a lot of different kinds of stuff. But between the Pixies and the Laws, we're there. You know, we've got That Gets You, Catapult, and Angels of the Silences, and Children, and Goodnight Elizabeth.
The drummer, was it Ben Mize? Was that the drummer?
Yeah.
Now, he was great at playing those up-tempo songs.
And the other stuff too, man, like
great drummer.
The first thing we ever recorded with him a week after he joined the band, maybe a week and a half, was Miller's Angels. Because we were recording that for the soundtrack it was the theme to The Crossing Guard at the time. The whole second half of that song, I invented off the top of my head in the studio right then. We did it with Marvin Etzioni, who was another one of the guys that we had thought about for our first record. You know, I improv the whole second half of that song, and Ben was right there, staring at me, getting it. And that second half, that song is so incredible to me. And the fact that we've only been in the band together for a week, and Ben could always hear where I was, hear where I wanted to go. He was very good when I would go off and start improvising things or break down a song and try something new. You know, he just was so good about that. He came from that Athens, Georgia scene, you know.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
He was from Georgia.
He had been, I found out later, when we had the auditions, when we kicked Steve out of the band, like, we had some auditions. We had Michael Blair in from Tom Waits' band, and Ben came in, and he knew how to play everything, including Children in Bloom, which hadn't even been recorded yet, but which we'd played at some live shows. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing, man. This guy, he nailed every song. It was crazy. And we hired him right away. And I found out later that David Lowery had called him up from Cracker, you know, because we were on the road a long time with Cracker.
He tipped him off.
He called him up and he said, hey, you like Counting Crows? And Ben's like, man, I love Counting Crows. He goes, you should learn all their songs. And Ben's like, why? And he goes, this guy's never gonna last. They're ready to kill each other. Just go learn all these songs. And then, like, a couple months later, we're calling up Ben. Ben gets a call from us because I'm like, I called David. You got any recommendations? Oh, you should call this guy Ben Mize. He's really good. And we call Ben. And he shows up, like, able to play everything, including, like, Children in Bloom, and which we, hadn't even recorded. It's like, it's not on any records. He just had it from some live takes all the time we were on the road with Cracker. David Lowery must have given it to him or something.
One of my best friends, when Recovering came out, was like, have you heard the new Counting Crows record? And I said, no. He's like, I'm going to give you my copy, my cassette of it. And I said, why? He goes, it's going to blow your mind. Every single song is amazing on it. I was like, okay, so he gives it to me, and I drive my Honda Civic around, and Catapult, first song that comes up. From then, like, every song blew my mind. And that really, to me, that is a perfect album. I want to play for the people that might not know that. melody, you vary it so many times and it's always right. You go to different notes of the chords, but it's always the right notes. And then the bass lines, there's just so much improvisation because there's so many inversions that Matt played in the bass.
He's great on that song.
Yes, I mean, it's just really so smart. It's so melodic. It's so emotional. And the shape, that's the thing to me, is that the shapes of your melodies are so, where the jumps are, where the releases are, the dissonances. I mean, there's like so many. And then the lyrics. The lyrics are really amazing.
Yeah, my singing is really different on that record. Like, I wanted it to be like on the verge of falling apart. Like, I want you to hear all the flaws in the voice and all of the not perfectly sung. I wanted you to hear so it sounded like it could explode in anger or just fall apart.
Yeah.
You know, and like you really hear it in that first verse.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And then it comes up in the chorus and it's sung really strong, but in the verse it's just like, because I was coming out of a really hard time and I wanted these songs to express that and like to feel all the kind of raw vulnerability, like you're in the middle of it, and I was so excited about all that. The record is such a disappointment in a lot of ways to me, just because it's such a good record and we put so much into it, and the response was just, it felt like people didn't even listen to it. They were just like, oh, it's another record for Counting Crows, just not as good. Same stuff they were doing last record. I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's so different. Or else it was just complaining about the fact that, I wrote an album about succeeding in rock and roll and struggling with it. And then you get a lot of shit for that because nobody wants to hear it. But it's like, that's real life. That's what happened. I'm sorry if you all want to be rock stars, but you don't understand what the fuck it is. And this is my life. And I wrote about very honestly on this record, and it just got so dismissed every time, because I love the record. The next three, this one, This Desert Life, and Hard Candy, I love them so much. And it's kind of so disregarded. We didn't get the press, especially, back actually listening to our records until Saturday nights and Sunday mornings.
Well,
it took 10 years.
You mentioned a song, Children in Bloom. This particular song is so strange with the counting, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's got one of the weirdest guitar licks. I want to play it.
It's a weird groove.
And the intro organ is beautiful. I love this. Come up with a melody over that weird guitar part that's beautiful and that beautiful, strange bass line?
I don't know. This is one I wrote on piano too. It's not like, it sounds like if there should be, because there are songs on this album that I wrote over music the other guys mostly came up with.
Okay.
And if there's one song that sounds like that, it's this one. But I wrote this one on piano. It's the first thing I ever wrote for this record. And I do not know how now. I listen to it. I mean, because I love this song, and it basically plays itself inside out almost. The beat change. It's like
the beat changes around. It's so interesting. It's
and
so
I
beautiful.
don't know how I possibly wrote that on piano or got that idea on piano, but I can barely play, and so sometimes the stuff I do, it would never occur to anyone else because they can play. And so they wouldn't do something like I would do, and somehow that's kind of what happened on this song. I do love the way it shifts out of that weird groove into the straight kind of chorus, and then back to the groove again.
Yes.
Karen Glauber used to always tell me that she used to always tell me it reminded her of the Carpet Crawlers from The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
Yeah.
You gotta get, because there's like, you gotta get in to get out. That's what the line is. You gotta get in to get out. I started singing that last year at the end when we were playing Children of Bloom. I started singing the Carpet Crawlers on the outro.
There are so many standout songs, Daylight Fading, Angels of the Silences, which was a great up-tempo song.
Yeah.
One of the hardest things to do, I think, is to write up-tempo songs like that. And that's, like, to me, the record just had everything. It was, and it was such a departure from the first record stylistically.
I thought everyone would be so excited about that. I thought there was so much pressure to just do After August and everything after.
Yeah.
You know, like, and we completely rejected that to do our own thing, which is kind of what we always did. And I thought that would be so appreciated by people or critics or whatever. And it just, the dismissal of this record and the next three were just still so disheartening. Like when we play concerts, the fact that like, some of those songs aren't standards. Like that Good Night LA will never be like something they've all been waiting for, you know, or High Life, or Wish I Was a Girl, you know. Some of the songs that we wrote or Monkey, you know, the things that I thought would be, you know, everyone's favorite album tracks that would be like such a big deal when we play them in concert, and they just aren't. You know, like it just didn't reach past the singles really, you know. It still disappoints me a lot.
Well, I think it's one of the greatest records of that entire decade. And,
Thank you.
And to me, it's a record I call a perfect album. Everything about it, the performances, the writing, the lyrics, the sonics.
We chased inspiration in those 10 years, like say, the years after August, like we were so, no matter what we went through that was disappointing with the reaction, we were still so turned on by making music. We've never really lost that, you know, like we were so excited to make this record with Gil Norton. And like after that, having heard a bunch of Sparkle Horse and Radiohead and things that had come out in those intervening years after Satellites, you know, we were so excited to go work with Dennis Herring and David Lowery to make This Desert Life, and to chase like making perfect pop music with Steve Lillywhite, you know, on Hard Candy. We were so fascinated by experimenting in the studio on This Desert Life and really working on the hooks on Hard Candy, and then just the raw emotion on Satellites. None of which were where the record company wanted us to go, you know, and we just didn't care. We just wanted to go do the things that turned us on, you know? We were really passionate about that. For all those years, we just did our own thing. And it's so rewarding to like listen to those records now, because I think they're all so good. And they're so uncompromising.
A Long December was, I'll just play the beginning of that. People know that was a huge hit off the record.
Long December, and there's reason to believe maybe this year will be better than the last. I can't remember the last thing that you said as you were leaving. Oh, the days go by so fast.
Now,
and it's one more day up in the canyon.
is this the only song you can play on the keyboard? Is that true or no?
It's probably the only one I can play right now. I get really lazy. I write a lot of stuff on piano, but I teach it to the band. Because in my head, most of them aren't meant to be those kind of piano songs like I'm playing. So I hear guitars and play piano.
Okay.
Once I teach it as a song, I can't wait to get off of it because what I'm doing with it is not as good as what they're going to do with it. So I prefer not to play. I can definitely play The One by Taylor Swift, because I've been playing that as an intro to Long December for the last year or so. Well, I could probably play it if I had my piano here with the music on top. I just tend to try and get off the piano. Like, I played the piano on the record on Mrs. Potter's Lullaby, on Colorblind Is Me. Even songs that are hard like Colorblind, there are some that I played. Amy Hit the Atmosphere. I just think generally it's better for me to be out front and to have Charlie's just most of the time I don't want to play it on the record because I want Charlie to play it. But there are certain things that I think I do really well. Good Night LA, Why Should You Come When I Call, Long December, Colorblind at the time, where I feel like I've got the feel for it and it needs me. But generally, Charlie's so good that why would you waste time with me playing piano,
It's interesting you talked about songs that you thought would be the standards. Are there standards anymore like there were in the 1940s, the tunes that became jazz standards?
Sure. I thought they'd become standards for our audience. I went to see the 1975 at Madison Square Garden. There was a ton of records off a ton of albums that the audience reacted to because those songs mean a lot to them. And they're not all singles, you know what I mean? Like, they knew those songs because they listened to those records and they loved them. And, and so when they played those songs in the concert, even ones that aren't the single, the audience reacted, It was a treat for them.
Well, one of the songs that was a hit for you guys was a Joni Mitchell standard, I guess.
Yeah.
Big Yellow Taxi. But when I think of Joni Mitchell, there's so many songs that come to mind that I don't know if...
Oh, that are better songs?
Not that are better songs, though, that are standards. There's so many Joni Mitchell standards. But that song, your version of that song, was a big hit. It really connected with people.
Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? It'd be a paradise and put up a fucking line.
Yeah, it was just one weekend. We had a week off from recording when we were making Hard Candy, and when we came back, a few of the guys mistook the date. They were supposed to be back on Friday. They came back on Monday. They just didn't know. I don't know. They just forgot. So we were there, and we just spent the weekend recording cover songs for B-sides. We did a bunch of stuff. We did a Sparkle Horse song. We did some Grateful Dead stuff. We just did a bunch of songs that weekend. And I had this idea rolling around in my head of this kind of hip-hop version of Big Yellow Taxi with just drums, upright bass, and acoustic guitar. And so we did that. And it turned out really well. A lot of the stuff turned out, but that one turned out especially well. And we got the idea, would it be cool to have someone do a remix of it? This is pretty cool, this acoustic song, but we should try and find someone to do a remix. I really loved the work that Neptunes were doing back then. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
So it was really early Pharrell.
Yep.
And I wanted them to try and do it. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, I really wanted to. But it was really getting late in the process, and we needed to have the album finished and turned in, and we were getting ready to leave on tour. And Ron Fair called me up and said, hey, I got a version of this. I know you're trying to look for people to remix this. I just sort of did this thing. Do you want to hear it? And I said, sure. And it was really good. I knew who Ron was because he had just finished, right before we mixed Hard Candy, Jack Joseph Puig was mixing Vanessa Carlton's first album.
Yeah, because that he produced.
Right before us. So it wasn't even out yet. And I said, who should we get to sing this part? And I'm like, you should just get that girl Vanessa to do it because I won't be there. And I'm afraid someone else will be intimidated. But if it's someone that you just finished producing, she'll be able to do a perfectly good job. She's a great singer. I don't even think the record was out yet, her record. And so she did that on it. So that version that came out, though, it's not even our version. Our thing is this kind of, you can see us play it live sometimes at concerts. It's like a real hip-hop groove on acoustic instruments. The version that was put out as a single for that movie was Ron's version. So it's not even really us playing except for my vocal. And I think that Dan and Immer may have recorded some extra guitars with Ron for it. But yeah, it was a big hit, but it was kind of it wasn't a statement about this is my favorite Joni song. I just happened to have this idea, and we were doing a bunch of covers one weekend because half the guys weren't there. And it was just like I had this idea for Big Yellow Taxi, and it turned out great. It's far from my favorite Joni song, or even close to. There's a million songs by hers that are absolute genius that I just never had any desire to cover. This was just something, I had a groove idea for it, and I wanted to try and mix hip hop with what we were doing. But we didn't have time to get any of the hip hop producers, and it ended up being Ron's version. And I like it a lot, but I don't even really consider it a Counting Crows song because we're not really even on it, except for my vocal.
You sang the harmony part on 6th Avenue Heartache.
Oh, yeah. Viper Room hangs.
I love that song, but your vocal is what makes the song. It's really the melody of the chorus.
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked great. It's a perfect addition to that chorus. Jake and I were friends. We hung out at the Viper Room all the time. And he had a first album on Virgin, I think, that has some great songs on it, but didn't take off at all. And then he got dropped by Virgin. And he'd been re-signed, and he was, nervous about making another record.
He did this with T-Bone, right?
Right, not yet though. And I had suggested, well, I think T-Bone is really good at helping people find who they are. And if you're trying to if there's one thing that's true of that first album of theirs, it didn't really have an identity like the second one did.
Yeah.
You didn't get who Jake was as a singer. And, there's a lot of, T-Bone can be an up and down person to work with, but he's a genius and he's a great guy. And he really is good at that unquantifiable thing of just helping you figure out how to be you on record, And it's something bands need sometimes, which is why Los Lobos has a great first thing with him, and the Bodines and Us.
Yeah.
And even though it's his second record, really, Bringing Down the Horse is the album that really established the Wallflowers and Jake.
Yeah.
And I think it worked really well. And I was at home one night up in Laurel Canyon, and I got a phone call from either Andy Slater or T-Bone. They said, we're down at, it's the Ocean Way that's in the valley. I can't remember it. It's Studio One or something. I can't remember what it's called then. It's something different now. We got this song. We think it's really good, but it's just kind of sitting there right now. And it's not working like we thought. And I said, which one? He said, 6, because I knew a bunch of the songs. I said, 6th Avenue Heartache. I said, I don't know that one. He goes, well, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, I'm at home. He said, can you come down? And I lived in Lookout Mountain in Laurel Canyon. Can you come over the hill and just sing on it? And I said, yeah, okay, sure. I got my car and drove over the hill, sat down, had a beer, and listened to the song a couple times.
I want to play the chorus part of it so that people know that, if they didn't know that it was you, it's so obviously you. That is such a great vocal performance there between the two of you. Your voice stands out so well, and it adds that, to me, it really adds this drama to the chorus. It's beautiful.
Mike Campbell's guitar on there too.
Amazing.
I mean, I just I literally had a beer and listened to it a couple times, and then sang it a couple times, and then went home. That was it. It was really quick. It was really easy. It just felt, I knew what to do. I knew just how to do it. I could sing in and out of Jake's voice on the 6th Avenue Heartache parts. And, I don't know, it just felt really natural. I felt like I knew exactly what to do, and it just sounded great right away. It's a great song. It really is a great song. Sometimes you just the perfect last bit of seasoning something needs,
Yeah.
Because that song is already a great song, but I felt like I just had the perfect thing to make it hit, I don't know, I was happy to do it because he's a friend of mine, and it's something I'm really, proud about, because he was real concerned about how to make his mark there, and that's the first single off the record.
Yes.
So and I was there with my friend to sing along and be a part of it, and You know, it's a very satisfying thing to do. Like, music's not easy to make, and when you can be a part of someone else's, make a difference in their music, that's really cool, you know?
Adam, could I get you to sing a song or two?
Sure, sure.
Bobby was a kid from round the town, kicks pumped up and head held down, underwater more than he was up. He dreamed submarines in bottle green, imaginary flight machines, but in blue jean flares he bubbled like a 7-Up. Everybody wants to know you when you're the only one to know. You shoot it up until you feel alive and play one more show. Plug into the buzz and shake it till it turns around, and you can't stop feeling the Paul-Smith suits and the elevator boots astound. And you can't help feeling they want you, and you want to, with her lips on fire and her head unscrewed, till it's time to whip another change and hit one more town. Bobby doesn't know her name, he holds on tightly just the same. Sometimes one more night is all you need. Met Alice near the Alamo one summer in San Antonio. Oh, I remember her, I don't remember me. Everybody wants to know you when you're the only one to know. And anything that feels alive is in one more show. Plug into the buzz and shake it till it turns around, and you can't stop feeling the Paul-Smith suits and the elevator boots astound. And you can't help feeling they want you, and you want to, with her hips on fire and her head unglued, till it's time to whip another change and hit one more town. Alice knows the secret, if she could tell you now, if you want to. She wants you, you want to. She can sparkle, pan and glide, and it's hard to feel, and I can't get high, and I don't always understand how to smile. Man, kids get sick of being bottled up. It drags you down till you throw it up. You gotta get out of the house, take a ride on the radio dial. Everybody wants to know you when you're the only one to know. And man, everything that feels alive is in one more show. Plug into the buzz and shake it till it turns around, and you can't stop feeling the Paul-Smith suits and the elevator boots astound. And you can't help feeling they want you, and you want to, 'cause the kid's so clean with his soul shampooed. And it's time to whip another change and hit one more town. Yeah, it's time to whip another change and hit one more town. Hey man, it's time to whip another change and hit one more town. Sold my piano, it couldn't come with me. I locked up my bedroom and I walked out into the air, when nothing I needed was left there behind me. I walk out through the shadows of Washington Square. Well, I wander the highway from Dublin to Berkeley, and I heard the songbird of Valley pouring, and I love and I love and I love like a fountain, but it left me with nothing, just memories of walking through Washington Square. Now I live in the shadows where all the lights are electric, and time is a number that rests on a wall, and nobody knows me, my friends and my family are as far from this city as Washington Square. So cover this warm night in a blanket of starlight, and I'll follow this freeway out into the air, in case you should wonder and wanted to find me. I'm traveling homeward to Washington Square. I'm traveling homeward to Washington Square. Washington Square. Washington Square.
Thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate it. It was such an honor to hear you guys play in person, and it was great to speak with you.
Thanks for letting us play those songs. We don't get the chance to do Washington Square like that very often.
You guys are
It's really nice.
welcome to come on and play anytime.
I'll take you up on that.
Let's do that.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.